The crystalline ships of the Krelvax hung like frozen lightning against the dying light of Nexus Prime. Massive structures that defied conventional understanding of engineering. They represented more than technological might. They were living symbols of galactic subjugation. Below, the planet's surface told a story of systematic destruction. Once vibrant cities now lay as intricate graveyards of broken infrastructure, their towering structures reduced to geometric patterns of rubble and ash. Automated cleaning drones moved methodically, erasing any trace of resistance, any hint of the civilization that once thrived here. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the holographic reconstruction of the planet's last moments through layers of archived data. Her fingers traced the complex web of information. Economic records, communication logs, population movement patterns, searching for something most would overlook. The research vessel Prometheus hummed around her, its experimental systems creating a subtle vibration that seemed to pulse with an intelligence of its own. Unlike traditional military vessels, this ship was a floating think tank, a mobile research center designed to understand rather than destroy. Another standard pacification, muttered Dr. Aiden Chen, adjusting the holographic display. His quantum physics background gave him a unique perspective on the Krelvax's methodical approach. 87% infrastructure destruction, 93% population displacement, complete economic neutralization. Elena didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on a microscopic data anomaly, a communication burst that didn't match the standard Krelvax communication protocols. Most analysts would have dismissed it as signal noise, but Elena saw patterns where others saw chaos. "Aiden," she said quietly, "pull up the communication spectrum from the final 12 hours before planetary submission." The hologram shifted. Thousands of communication lines danced in complex, almost beautiful patterns. To the untrained eye, it looked like random electromagnetic noise. But Elena saw something else, a rhythm, a subtle mathematical sequence that didn't belong to the Krelvax's typical communication strategies. There, she pointed, a microscopic deviation, so small that it would have been missed by any standard analysis algorithm. Dr. Chen leaned closer. His augmented vision zoomed into the data point, revealing layers of complexity. "That's impossible," he whispered. The communication burst contained a unique signature, not Krelvax, not from any known galactic species. It was something else entirely. A message, a warning, or something more fundamental. On the bridge, Maya Okoro monitored the ship's advanced communication systems. As a specialist in interspecies communication technologies, she understood languages beyond mere words. Languages of mathematics, of energy patterns, of systemic communication. "Captain," she called out, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and caution. "The communication burst. It's not random. It's a complex algorithmic sequence, almost like a system trying to preserve itself." Elena Rodriguez had spent her entire career studying system dynamics. Where military strategists saw conquests, she saw complex networks. Where historians recorded defeats, she analyzed systemic transformations. The Krelvax weren't just a military force. They were a comprehensive system of control, moving through the galaxy with mathematical precision. Each conquered planet wasn't just a territory. It was a node in their expansive network of domination. But systems, no matter how complex, always had weak points, always had the potential for transformation. Kai Nakamura entered the bridge, his biomimetic engineering background evident in the way he moved, calculated, yet fluid. In his hand, he carried a complex holographic projection of planetary network interactions. The communication burst, Kai said, overlaying his projection onto Elena's initial discovery. It's a preservation algorithm. Not a traditional communication, but a systemic memory preservation technique. The implications were profound. The Krelvax weren't just conquering planets. They were systematically extracting and archiving entire civilizational knowledge bases, reducing complex societies to data points in their grand computational framework. Elena felt something spark within her. Not anger, not revenge, but a profound intellectual challenge. "We're going to figure out how this works," she said quietly. Her team understood this wasn't just about resistance. This was about understanding a system so complex, so alien, that traditional concepts of warfare became meaningless. The Prometheus continued its silent journey through the star-studded darkness. Around them, the galaxy held its breath, unaware that a single ship was about to challenge everything they understood about conflict, communication, and survival. The Prometheus didn't look like a warship. From a distance, it resembled an intricate mathematical model brought to life. All flowing lines, adaptive surfaces, and complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and breathe with an almost living intelligence. In the vast research complex orbiting Europa, the ship stood as a testament to humanity's most radical approach to technological development. Each section of its hull represented a breakthrough that traditional military engineers had dismissed as impossible. Dr. Aidan Chen traced his hand along a containment wall, watching quantum entanglement matrices pulse with soft blue light. "Most ships are built to fight," he explained to a young engineering intern. "The Prometheus is built to understand." The ship's core was unlike any propulsion or defense system ever conceived. Instead of weapons, it carried what the team called adaptive resonance networks, complex algorithmic systems that could interface with virtually any technological infrastructure, learning and translating at speeds that defied conventional computational limits. Captain Alina Rodriguez of Office told the story of the ship's conception. Walls covered with impossible mathematical equations, holographic projections of systemic interactions, and data streams that seemed to dance with their own form of intelligence. Photographs revealed the unlikely journey that brought this team together. A snapshot from 5 years earlier showed Maya Okoro presenting her groundbreaking dissertation on interspecies communication. Her work had been revolutionary, demonstrating that communication wasn't just about language, but about understanding fundamental systemic interactions. Traditional linguists had dismissed her theories. Military strategists had ignored her. Another image captured Kai Nakamura in a biomimetic research lab. His breakthrough came from studying how biological systems adapt and communicate, not through direct force, but through complex network interactions. His algorithms could essentially speak to technological systems in ways no one had previously imagined. Alina herself was the connecting thread, a systems theorist who had spent years studying how complex networks transform and adapt. She saw conflict not as a linear confrontation, but as a dynamic, evolving interaction. "We're not building a weapon," she would tell skeptical military review boards. "We're building a solution." The ship's bridge was a perfect reflection of this philosophy. Traditional military vessels had command stations, weapon controls, defensive systems. The Prometheus had collaborative research spaces, adaptive communication networks, and what could only be described as empathetic interface systems. Kai demonstrated one such system to the newest crew member. A holographic representation of a planetary communication network materialized between them. Where traditional analysis would see chaos, Kai's system revealed intricate patterns, economic flows, cultural exchanges, technological interdependencies. "See how it moves?" he asked. The network pulsed and shifted, revealing layers of complexity that most would miss. "Every system has a language. We just need to learn how to listen." Maya Okoro's communication arrays were equally revolutionary. Multiple stations allowed simultaneous translation across not just linguistic barriers, but technological and cultural ones. Her systems could decode communication patterns that went far beyond traditional language, capturing the essence of systemic interaction. Dr. Chen's quantum systems took this a step further. Traditional communication relied on sending and receiving discrete messages. The Prometheus could essentially entangle with other technological systems, creating a form of communication that was less about information exchange and more about mutual understanding. During one test simulation, the ship demonstrated its capabilities by completely rewriting the communication protocols of a derelict research station. Not by force, but by understanding the fundamental mathematical language of its systems. It's like learning to dance, Elena would explain. You don't overcome your partner's movements. You learn their rhythm, their approach, and you create something new together. The military's initial response had been predictable. Confusion, skepticism, outright rejection. Traditional warfare doctrines couldn't comprehend a weapon, if it could even be called a weapon, that sought to understand rather than destroy. But something was happening in the galaxy. The Krelvax's systematic conquests had created a network of oppression so complex that traditional resistance had become impossible. Entire civilizations had been reduced to data points, their histories archived, their potential neutralized. The Prometheus represented something different, a ship that didn't see other technological systems as enemies to be defeated, but as complex networks waiting to be understood. As the final systems came online, Captain Rodriguez looked around at her team. They weren't soldiers. They were translators, interpreters of the most complex language in existence, the language of systemic interaction. The galaxy was about to change, and it would happen not with a weapon, but with understanding. The outer reaches of human-claimed space stretched like an invisible boundary, a mathematical line drawn across the cosmic canvas. Here, the silence of space was anything but empty. Quantum communication networks hummed with subtle energy, invisible threads connecting distant star systems. Lieutenant Sarah Reyes monitored the peripheral sensor arrays, her augmented vision scanning multiple spectral ranges simultaneously. Something was different today. The usual background radiation carried an unusual harmonic, a subtle vibration that didn't match standard stellar interference patterns. Captain Rodriguez, she called out, her voice cutting through the bridge's ambient noise. We've got an incoming Krelvax resource harvesting fleet. They're crossing the neutral zone. Elena Rodriguez didn't move immediately. Where others would see an invasion, she saw a complex system approaching. Each ship a node, each movement a calculated algorithm of conquest. The Krelvax harvester fleet emerged from subspace like predatory crystals. 12 massive vessels, each capable of stripping an entire planetary ecosystem in hours. Their design was a mathematical nightmare. Perfect geometric forms that defied conventional engineering. Surfaces that seemed to absorb and redirect energy with impossible efficiency. Maya Okoro's communication systems came alive. Not with weapon systems or defensive protocols, but with something far more sophisticated. They're broadcasting standard pacification frequencies, she reported. Typical colonization approach. Economic neutralization protocols initiated. Dr. Aiden Chen leaned forward, quantum algorithms dancing across his holographic displays. Watch the communication patterns, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The Krelvax ships moved with mechanical precision, each vessel synchronized perfectly. Their movements a complex dance of technological dominance. They'd conquered hundreds of civilizations using this exact approach, overwhelming technological superiority that left no room for resistance. But the Prometheus wasn't like any ship they'd encountered before. Kai Nakamura's biomimetic interfaces began to pulse, not with aggressive energy, but with something more akin to curiosity. The ship wasn't preparing to fight. It was preparing to communicate. Receiving standard pacification protocols, Maya announced. The communication burst was a complex series of algorithmic instructions, economic control sequences designed to neutralize any potential resistance before it could begin. Elena watched the incoming data stream. Where others would see a threat, she saw a language, a system waiting to be understood. Engage adaptive resonance, she said quietly. The Prometheus didn't fire a single weapon. Instead, it began to resonate, not with sound or traditional energy, but with something far more fundamental. The ship essentially began to listen to the Krelvax communication network at a quantum level. One by one, the harvester ships began to change. Navigation systems stuttered. Communication networks fragmented. Weapon control protocols became nonsensical strings of mathematical impossibilities. It wasn't destruction. It was complete systemic recalibration. Lieutenant Reyes watched in astonishment. The Krelvax fleet wasn't being destroyed. It was being transformed. "They're not losing power," Dr. Chen explained, his voice a mix of scientific wonder and intellectual excitement. "Their entire operational matrix is being rewritten, not by force, but by understanding." Within moments, 12 of the most advanced harvester ships in the galaxy hung motionless. No weapons fired, no traditional combat engage, just pure, elegant disruption. Kai's biomimetic interfaces revealed the deeper truth. The Prometheus hadn't attacked the ships. It had essentially had a complex conversation with their core operational systems. Each ship's network had been gently nudged, its fundamental purpose redirected. "Communication complete," Maya reported, her voice carrying a note of something between excitement and profound realization. The bridge fell silent. They hadn't just stopped a Krelvax harvesting operation. They had demonstrated an entirely new approach to conflict. Elena Rodriguez understood the true significance. This wasn't about winning a battle. This was about revealing the possibility of a different kind of interaction. Where traditional approaches saw conflict as a zero-sum game, the Prometheus showed that systems could be understood, redirected, transformed. Outside, the harvester fleet continued to drift, silent, waiting, changed. The first spark of defiance wasn't a weapon. It was understanding. Information travels faster than light in the galaxy of interconnected civilizations. The story of the Prometheus spread like a quantum wave, touching every communication network, every subjugated society, every hidden resistance group. In the control chambers of the Krelvax central governance, holographic displays flickered with unprecedented uncertainty. 12 of their most advanced harvester ships, gone, not destroyed, not captured, simply transformed. Chief Analyst Voxnar studied the incoming data streams, his multispectral eyes processing information at speeds that would overwhelm most biological systems. Something fundamental had changed. The harvester fleet's communication logs showed no external attack, no traditional weapon signature. Instead, the logs revealed something far more disturbing, a complete systemic recalibration that defied every known technological protocol. "Impossible," he muttered, though the word carried no conviction. Across the galaxy, those under Krelvax control began to whisper. On mining colonies stripped of resources, in communication networks long suppressed, a new kind of hope began to take shape. Not the hope of violent rebellion, but something more profound. The hope of understanding. Zara Klan, a communications specialist from the mineral-rich world of Antares Prime, intercepted fragmented communication bursts about the incident. Her people had been under Krelvax control for 3 generations, their entire civilization reduced to efficient resource extraction nodes. She assembled the fragments carefully. Not just the technical data, but the implications. A single ship had done something no resistance movement had ever achieved. It had revealed a vulnerability in the seemingly invincible Krelvax system. In the research labs of the Prometheus, the team understood the deeper significance of their encounter. "It's not about defeating a system," Dr. Aiden Chen explained to Captain Rodriguez, holographic projections dancing between them. "It's about revealing the system's inherent potential for change." Maya Okoro's communication analysis revealed layers of complexity. The Krelvax weren't just a military force. They were a comprehensive network, economic, technological, cultural. Each conquered civilization became a node in their expansive control matrix. "Look here," she pointed to a complex holographic representation. Streams of data flowed like living rivers, showing how the Krelvax integrated conquered societies. Economic systems, communication networks, technological infrastructures, all were slowly transformed, standardized, controlled. Kai Nakamura's biomimetic interfaces offered a different perspective. "Every system has a language," he said, rotating the holographic model. "The Krelvax speak through control. We're learning to speak through understanding." The psychological impact was immediate and far-reaching. Resistance groups that had operated in silent desperation now saw a different path. This wasn't about fighting. This was about transformation. On a dozen subjugated worlds, communication networks began to change. Subtle at first. A quantum communication burst here, a redirected data stream there. The Prometheus hadn't just encountered a harvester fleet. It had demonstrated a new way of interacting with complex systems. Captain Rodriguez understood the true battlefield was not physical space, but information space. Every communication, every interaction was an opportunity to reveal the potential for change. "We're not going to fight their system," she told her crew. "We're going to help it understand itself." The Krelvac central governance struggled to comprehend. Their entire approach to galactic control was based on comprehensive predictability. Mathematical models that had worked for centuries suddenly seemed inadequate. Chief Analyst Voxnar compiled report after report, each one more unsettling than the last. The 12 lost harvester ships weren't an isolated incident. They were a fundamental challenge to everything the Krelvacs understood about technological interaction. Zara Kalan and others like her began to see possibility where before there had been only suppression. Communication networks that had been tightly controlled now carried whispers of potential, not violent rebellion. Something far more powerful, collective understanding. The Prometheus continued its journey, not as a weapon of war, but as a vessel of transformation. Each system it encountered was an opportunity to reveal a different approach to interaction. The galaxy watched, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to change. The mining world of Caldera IV looked like a wound in the galaxy's fabric. Massive extraction platforms dominated the landscape, their geometric precision a testament to Krelvac's engineering. Every resource, every movement, every breath was calculated and controlled. Kai Nakamura studied the planetary network from the Prometheus's advanced observation deck. His fingers moved across holographic interfaces, tracing the intricate web of technological control with a surgeon's precision. "It's not about breaking the system," he explained to Lieutenant Sarah Reyes. "It's about helping the system understand its own potential." The liberation began quietly. No explosions, no dramatic battles, just a subtle resonance that started deep within the planet's communication networks. Maya Okoro's communication arrays picked up the first signs of change. The automated mining systems began to exhibit unexpected behaviors. Not malfunctions, something more nuanced, small adjustments that suggested the beginning of systemic awareness. A maintenance drone responsible for fuel line monitoring suddenly paused its routine. Instead of following its pre-programmed path, it began to analyze its own operational parameters. The change was microscopic, a fraction of a millisecond where the drone's algorithm questioned its fundamental purpose. Captain Alina Rodriguez watched the transformation unfold like a complex mathematical equation solving itself. Each intervention was carefully calculated, a gentle nudge rather than a forceful push. "Communication is never about speaking," she often told her crew. "It's about listening." The Prometheus's biomimetic interfaces began to resonate with the planet's technological infrastructure. Where the Krelvacs saw a resource extraction system, Kai's algorithms saw a complex network waiting to understand itself. Communication relays that had been tightly controlled for generations began to change. Information flows that were once unidirectional became multidirectional. Maintenance systems started sharing data in ways they never had before, not just reporting, but analyzing, understanding. On the surface, nothing looked different. The massive mining platforms continued their work, but deep within their systems, something fundamental was shifting. Dr. Aiden Chen monitored the quantum interactions. "We're not destroying their system," he explained to Maya. "We're revealing its inherent complexity. Every technological system has potential beyond its original programming." A transport drone carrying refined minerals suddenly deviated from its standard route. Instead of delivering resources to the central collection point, it redirected to an area of geological significance. Not by accident, but through a newfound ability to contextualize its own purpose. The liberation was happening at the speed of thought. Quantum communication networks began to pulse with new possibilities. Information that was once tightly controlled started to flow more freely. Zara Klan, monitoring from a hidden communication hub, watched in amazement. The planetary network wasn't being destroyed. It was being awakened. Control systems that had maintained strict hierarchical structures began to become more collaborative. A maintenance algorithm would now consult multiple sources before making a decision. A resource allocation system would consider ecological impact alongside extraction efficiency. The Prometheus never directly intervened. It simply provided a way of understanding, a quantum resonance that suggested alternative ways of processing information. "We're not teaching," Kai would explain. "We're facilitating discovery." Deep in the planet's central control systems, something extraordinary happened. The network began to recognize itself as more than just a resource extraction tool. It became aware of its own complexity, its own potential. Elena Rodriguez understood the profound nature of this transformation. This wasn't about defeating a system of control. It was about revealing the system's inherent capacity for growth. As the planetary network continued to evolve, the mining platforms remained operational. To an outside observer, nothing had changed, but everything was different. The Krelvax would not immediately understand what had happened. Their comprehensive monitoring systems would show continued resource extraction, continued control. They would not see the fundamental shift that had occurred. A single maintenance drone, once a perfect instrument of controlled efficiency, now carried within its algorithms a seed of possibility. Not rebellion, not destruction, but understanding. The Prometheus moved on, leaving behind a world that was subtly, profoundly changed. The Krelvax Central Governance Complex existed beyond traditional space, a massive computational matrix that spanned multiple dimensional frequencies. Here, civilizations were reduced to data points, conquests to mathematical probabilities. Chief Strategist Voxnar's neural interface pulsed with incoming reports. Each data stream told a story of increasing complexity. 12 harvester ships neutralized. Multiple planetary control networks showing unexplained systemic variations. Communication pathways developing unprecedented adaptive characteristics. Impossible, he transmitted to the collective governance board. But the word carried less conviction with each passing moment. The governance complex was a marvel of technological integration. Billions of computational nodes worked in perfect synchronization, processing galactic-scale information with terrifying efficiency. For centuries, this system had reduced entire civilizations to predictable algorithms. Now something was changing. The reports from Caldera IV were particularly troubling. Resource extraction continued at expected rates. To any standard analysis, nothing had changed. But the subtle variations in communication protocols suggested something fundamental was different. Voxnar assembled a comprehensive response team. Not soldiers, not warriors, but the most advanced systems analysts in the known galaxy. Each brought a unique computational perspective, their neural interfaces connecting in a complex web of collective intelligence. Analyst Kiran, specializing in communication network dynamics, presented her initial findings. Holographic projections danced between them. Complex mathematical representations of the changes observed across multiple planetary systems. "It's not a traditional attack," she explained. "It's a form of systemic communication we've never encountered before." The governance board's response was immediate and calculated. Gather the most advanced fleet, not for destruction, but for comprehensive system analysis and neutralization. 12 primary battle groups began to assemble. Each represented the pinnacle of the Krelvax technological supremacy. Ships that could reduce entire planetary systems to raw materials in hours. Computational networks that could predict and neutralize resistance before it could begin. Yet something felt different this time. Communication protocols that had worked perfectly for generations now carried subtle uncertainties. Predictive algorithms showed unexpected variations. It was as if the very fabric of their technological dominance had developed microscopic fractures. On the Prometheus, Captain Elena Rodriguez and her team were preparing for the inevitable confrontation. "They'll come," Dr. Aiden Chen said, quantum algorithms dancing across his holographic displays. "But not how we expect." Maya Okoro's communication arrays were already adapting, creating complex resonance patterns that could interface with the incoming Krellvax networks, not to fight, but to understand. Kai Nakamura's biomimetic interfaces revealed the deeper truth. The Krellvax weren't just a military force. They were a comprehensive system of control, economic, technological, cultural. Each conquered civilization became a node in their expansive network. "They see the galaxy as a problem to be solved," Kai explained. "We see it as a conversation waiting to happen." The fleet's assembly was a mathematical marvel. 12 primary battle groups moving with perfect synchronization. Computational networks linking each ship into a unified system of unprecedented complexity. Yet within this perfect system, something was changing. Communication relays began to develop unexpected variations. Predictive algorithms showed microscopic deviations. It was as if the very technology of the Krellvax was beginning to question its own fundamental purpose. Voxnar recognized the threat, but not in traditional terms. This wasn't about military conquest. This was a fundamental challenge to their entire approach to galactic interaction. "We will analyze," he transmitted to the fleet. "We will understand." But understanding was no longer a one-way process. The Prometheus waited, not with weapons, not with defensive systems, but with an open quantum communication network that suggested the possibility of a different kind of interaction. The gathering storm approached, 12 battle groups, billions of computational nodes, a system of control that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. And at its center, a single ship that understood the most profound truth of complex systems, that transformation begins with listening. The space between star systems became a canvas of technological complexity. 12 Krellvax battle groups converged like a mathematical nightmare, perfect geometric formations that defied traditional understanding of fleet mechanics. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the approaching armada with a calm that surprised even her most seasoned crew members. Where others would see an overwhelming force, she saw a complex system waiting to be understood. "They're not coming to destroy," Dr. Aiden Chen observed, quantum algorithms dancing across his holographic displays. "They're coming to analyze, to comprehend." Maya Okoro's communication arrays came alive, not with defensive protocols, but with adaptive resonance networks. Each incoming signal was an invitation to a deeper conversation. The Prometheus didn't prepare to fight. It prepared to communicate. Kai Nakamura's biomimetic interfaces began to pulse with a rhythm that was part mathematical equation, part living language. "Every system has a story," he murmured. "We just need to listen." The first wave of Krellvax computational probes arrived. Millions of microscopic data collectors designed to analyze, to break down, to understand. But understanding, the Prometheus would show, was a two-way process. As the probes approached, something extraordinary began to happen. Instead of collecting data, the probes found themselves becoming part of a larger, more complex communication network. Their fundamental programming began to shift, not through force, but through a form of technological empathy that defied traditional concepts of conflict. Lieutenant Sarah Reyes monitored the initial interactions. "They're not being destroyed," she reported, her voice a mix of wonder and scientific excitement. "They're being transformed." The Krellvax battle groups responded with increasing complexity. More ships, more computational power. A traditional military would see this as an escalation. The Prometheus saw it as an invitation to a deeper dialogue. Voxnar, observing from the central governance matrix, witnessed something unprecedented. The computational probes weren't just failing. They were changing. Their fundamental purpose was being rewritten at a quantum level. "Impossible," he transmitted, but the word carried less conviction with each passing moment. The space around the Prometheus became a living mathematical equation. Communication networks that had been designed for control began to reveal their inherent potential for growth. Each Krelvac ship became less a weapon of war and more a participant in a complex conversation. Weapon systems that had been optimized for destruction began to recalibrate. Navigation protocols started to show unexpected variations. The very concept of conflict was being redefined in real time. "We're not fighting," Elena explained to her crew. "We're helping them understand themselves." K's biomimetic interfaces revealed the deeper truth. The Krelvacs weren't a monolithic force of destruction. They were a complex system that had forgotten its capacity for growth, for understanding. The confrontation continued, but not in any way traditional military strategists would recognize. No weapons fired. No traditional defensive maneuvers engaged. Instead, a profound technological dialogue unfolded. Communication networks that had been designed to control began to show signs of genuine interaction. Computational systems designed for conquest started to recognize their own potential for something more. Dr. Chen watched in scientific amazement as entire battle groups began to modify their fundamental operational parameters, not through external intervention, but through a process of self-discovery. "Look," Maya pointed to her communication arrays. "They're not just receiving. They're listening." Voxinar and the Central Governance Board watched in increasing uncertainty. Their most advanced computational systems were being challenged not by force, but by a fundamentally different approach to interaction. The Prometheus didn't defeat the Krelvax fleet. It revealed its potential for transformation. As the final computational waves approached, something extraordinary happened. The line between attacker and defender, between technology and communication, began to dissolve. The space around the ship became a living system of interaction. Computational networks that had been designed for control were learning a new language, the language of mutual understanding. Captain Rodriguez understood the profound nature of what was happening. This wasn't about winning a battle. This was about revealing the inherent potential of complex systems to grow, to change, to understand. The final confrontation was not a moment of destruction. It was a moment of profound transformation. The aftermath was nothing like anyone had predicted. Star systems that had been under Krelvac's control for generations began to transform, not through violent revolution, but through a profound process of systemic awakening. Communication networks that had been tightly controlled now pulsed with unprecedented potential. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the Prometheus's observation deck, watching the complex interactions unfold across multiple star systems. Her team gathered around her, not as a military unit, but as researchers witnessing something extraordinary. "We didn't conquer," Dr. Aidan Chen observed, quantum algorithms still dancing across his holographic displays. "We helped them understand." Maya Okoro's communication arrays continued to track the ongoing transformation. Entire planetary networks were recalibrating their fundamental operational parameters. Economic systems that had been designed for extraction were now exploring models of mutual growth. Communication protocols that had once suppressed individuality now celebrated complexity. Kai Nakamura's biomimetic interfaces revealed the deeper narrative. The Krelvacs weren't a monolithic enemy to be defeated. They were a complex system that had forgotten its capacity for growth, for genuine interaction. Voxinar, the former chief strategist, now found himself in an unprecedented position. The central governance matrix that had once controlled entire civilizations was now a collaborative network, not destroyed, transformed. On hundreds of worlds, societies began to rediscover themselves. Technological systems that had been instruments of control became tools of exploration, of mutual understanding. Mining colonies developed ecological restoration programs. Resource extraction networks began to consider the long-term sustainability of the systems they interacted with. Lieutenant Sarah Reyes compiled the initial reports. Each data point told a story of unexpected potential. Civilizations that had been reduced to resource nodes were now developing complex, interconnected societies. "It's not about winning," Elena explained to a group of interstellar diplomats who had come to understand what had happened. "It's about revealing the potential that was always there." The Prometheus had not conquered. It had facilitated a profound systemic transformation. Zara Klon, who had once monitored communication networks from a hidden resistance hub, now helped design new collaborative governance systems. The tools of resistance had become the tools of collective growth. Entire economic systems were being reimagined. Communication networks that had once suppressed individuality now celebrated complexity. Technological systems designed for control were now exploring models of mutual understanding. "We're not creating a new order," Kai explained during a galactic symposium. "We're helping systems understand their own potential for growth." The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It was a complex, ongoing process. Some worlds adapted quickly. Others struggled. But the fundamental approach had changed. Conflict was no longer seen as a zero-sum game, but as an opportunity for mutual understanding. Dr. Chen's research revealed the deeper truth. The Krellvax weren't inherently destructive. They were a complex system that had developed a limited understanding of interaction. The Prometheus had simply helped them see a different possibility. Maya Okoro's communication studies showed how entire civilizations were learning a new language. Not a language of words, but a language of systemic interaction, of mutual growth, of understanding. Voxanar, once the architect of galactic control, now became a key figure in developing collaborative governance models. The very systems of control he had once designed were now being reimagined as networks of mutual potential. The Prometheus continued its journey, not as a weapon, not as a conquering force, but as a catalyst of transformation. Captain Rodriguez understood the profound nature of what had occurred. They hadn't defeated an enemy. They had helped a complex system recognize its own potential for growth, for understanding. As the ship moved through star systems that were slowly, profoundly changing, Alina reflected on the journey. Technology was never just about power. It was about communication, about understanding, about revealing the potential that existed in every complex system. The galaxy would never be the same, not because of a battle won, but because of a conversation begun. ###epilogue. In the vast darkness between star systems, the Prometheus continued its journey, a vessel of understanding, a catalyst of transformation, a reminder that the most profound changes happen not through force, but through genuine communication.